Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the Primo VE Become an Expert session. Our today topic is Primo VE APIs. I'm Sigal. I'm part of the delivery team. I'm in charge of the Primo to Primo VE project move. So let's get started. In this session, we will cover all the configuration differences, Primo Classic vs Primo VE. We will see how to prepare your environment, how to check your daily usage of the APIs, and we will see some live examples, how to convert your code to support Primo VE. We will have time for your live questions, and I will show you some frequently asked questions and answers, of course. So for each of the following area, you may see a difference in your API's configuration, paths, parameters, and responses. Let's start with the path. Most of you are using the API gateway. So any call using that gateway will not require any path changes. So for example, for your original gateway, it's the API AP hosted exlibrisgroup.com. So in case you have an API call using this gateway, you will not be required to change the path. Path changes will be required only if your code uses internal path for the Primo APIs. Now let's see examples. If your classic Primo uses the following URL, Primo library, libweb, web services, REST, Primo Explore, you should modify it. It's a shorter version. It's Primo web service, REST pub. The second difference is the parameters. The VID parameter in Primo VE's API request is included also with the institution code. You can see here under VID, institution code, and the view code, while in Classic Primo, it was just the view code. Let's see an example, how it looks like. Here is the API URL. You can see it starts with the gateway, the API AP hosted exlibrisgroup.com. Next, we have the VID parameter, which is the institution code, ABC inst, and the view code together. While in Classic Primo, the call used only the VID for the view code. The third configuration difference is the response. And the structure remains the same for Primo and for Primo VE, but some data is not included because it is not used by Primo VE. For example, the PNX search and browse sections. And we will see it more depthly in the examples. Okay, so what we need to know is what is needed from us to do while we're moving to Primo VE and what is needed to be changed as far as the APIs. So first, we will do some preparation. We want to check your daily usage of the APIs. It's a good chance to re-examine your solution before just to do a copy to Primo VE. Is there a need for this functionality? Do we really use it? Do we really need it? It's a good opportunity to clean your code or to check if there is a better implementation in the community or in Primo Studio. Here you have a link to Primo Studio add-ons that you can implement and to see some code examples. After we decided which APIs are needed and we want to use in Primo VE, you want to review your customization package or any other source code that you may use, and to review the custom JavaScript file inside the customization package. The customization package can be downloaded from Primo VE backoffice, which is basically Alma, under the Discovery Configure views. And inside the custom JavaScript file, you should look for two parameters. One, it's the HTTP. This is the Angular implementation method, or you may use another equivalent method, and the Primo library. So for each one of these two parameters, you should check the URL. If we're talking about external calls that are not the Primo server, you should do nothing. In case we're using calls to Primo server, we want to check first that the API path is supported by Primo VE and that the response data is exist on VE. We will see examples of the response data that used to be exist in Classic Primo and now it isn't in Primo VE. So after we done the preparation and we saw what is needed to be changed, let's see exactly what you need to change. And here are some examples that you may find useful to convert your APIs. The first example, this function do a basic search and goes to the search API in the PNX. You can see here that the URL is using the old path, Primo library, libweb, web services, REST, Primo Explore, v1. Now in Primo VE, this URL should be changed to the following, Primo web service, REST, pub, PNXs. So every time you watch in your code for Primo library, you should change it. The second example is to change the PNX referral. You can see here the record ID goes to pnx.search.record ID. Now the record ID is in the control section. So you need to make sure that each direct to record is exist. And let's see how to get it done. I prepare some examples that we can take a look. Okay, here we have example of two searches, one at the Primo VE and one at the Classic Primo. Let's start with the Classic Primo. Okay. Now I'm pressing the F12. Okay. I chose network and I filtered by PNX. Let's do the search again so we can catch it. Okay. Here under preview, under docs, 0. First, we can see the old API path. You can see here Primo library, libweb, web service. This was the old path. And also interesting part is the PNX. You can see here that some sections are not relevant for Primo VE and this structure has changed. Okay, for example, PNX. In our case, we saw the search and the record ID. Okay, now let's see an example of Primo VE and see the difference between them two. Okay, that's Primo VE. Again, I'm pressing F12 to monitor the request. Okay, let's do the search again. Here, got it. Again, the same structure, documents, 0. Here you can see the new path, Primo Web Service, REST Pub. And the PNX. Here you can see that the sections are shorter and the structure is changed. So if I'll use an old reference to PNX search, I will get an error. So you need to make sure that in your code, you don't have old reference to the PNX. Okay. In our case, the record ID is in the control. Okay. Control record ID. So that was the first example. Now let's see some code examples. Okay. First, before we start with the code, I want to show you how the API parameters are built. So let's start with a basic search in Primo VE. That's one we don't need. Okay, you can see the search that I'm conducting is the author creator is Elias Safrani, and any field contains cloud computing. I have filters available online. So let's see the URL. Okay, so first we have the server, and let's start with the query. The creator contains Elias Safrani, and any field contains cloud computing. And the filter is by resource type is books, I'm sorry. The search scope and profile are here, search scope, tab, sort, the VID, which we talked about. We have the institution code and the view code, okay? The facet will be online resources, okay? So this is how the URL built. Now let's see the API. First, I will show you the result before we will see the URL. See the result here. By the way, here we saw 12 results. We will see the same in the API. Okay, you can see total results 12. Now let's see how the API call is built. First, we have the gateway. Okay, it's the Europe gateway in this case. The VID is the same. You can see here the institution code and the view code. The same goes here for the parameters, the tab, the search scope. Everything is the same. And the addition here is the API key. Okay. Now, when you move from Classic Primo to Primo VE, all the URL, the old URL, are still valid because inside Primo VE configuration and during the migration process, we do for you the mapping, which means that the API call will know to map your old tab to the new search profile and the old scope in Primo to the new scope in Primo VE. So therefore, the parameter remains the same. Now let's see some code examples. Okay. In this case, if you have external code that uses the search API, okay, here I want to conduct a search. So in this case, the URL, I will search for the Primo library parameter. Okay, and I can see I have here the old path. So in this case, I will modify my code to use the new path. Okay, and that is the first change that is needed. The second example, here I have some different search without any further options. It's a get method, and this is why I can also put it on the browser and I don't need a special client to check that request. So first we will start with the path change, like we saw. Let's take the new one and change it. And second, here on the record ID, I can see that I'm referring to the PNX search section. And this section is no longer exist in Primo VE PNX. So we want to change it, okay? We want that the PNX will be control record ID. So that is the changes that are needed from your end. Let's start with some frequently asked questions. So we talked earlier about the API key. So the question is, do we need to change our API key? And the answer is no. We don't need to change the API key. It remains the same. The one thing that does change is the routing. So currently your API key is pointing to the classic Primo, and during the go live, Exlibris changes the routing. Instead of pointing to classic Primo, to Primo VE. So your calls, if you are using the API gateway, remains the same because of the parameters mapping, because of the API key, and because of the gateway. How can we check Primo VE API request before go live? Usually you want to test it, to test your code change before you go live. So you should submit a ticket to support or email us regarding changing temporarily the routing. We can do one of two things. First, we can change the routing temporarily for your testing to point to Primo VE production instead of classic Primo. You could do your test and then we will set it back. Or we can change the routing to point to your Primo VE sandbox. You can do your testing and then we will set it back. Next question is, does Primo VE support Analytics API? Not yet. The Primo Analytics is accessed from within the Alma menu, which is similar to the way you used to access it from the Primo, but the API is still not supported. I want to show you. Okay, when you want to perform an API change from Classic Primo to Primo VE, you should go into the developer network. I assume that you are familiar with this platform. You should search for Primo REST APIs. And here you have a list of all REST APIs, okay? And for each one of them, you will see like a bold title if this API is supported in Primo VE. So for example, the Primo search is supported from Primo VE, and like user favorites, you have some that are not yet supported. For example, for Primo VE, currently only the retrieve favorites is supported. So going back to your question, the analytics is still not yet supported. So before you make the changes that we talked about, first you should check if it's supported or not, or if any other parameters is needed. Let's go back to the questions. Okay. Does the X service API still function as they do today, or would we need to migrate to other APIs? So the Primo V supports the new Primo REST API suites, which basically provides an access to all search capabilities and results as used by the new Primo interface. Let's go back to the developer network. Okay, and where is the X services? Here you can see the X services. So this API is supported by Primo VE as well. Okay, let's say example for the search. Okay, and you can see the parameters remain the same in Primo VE. And this is the example. Okay, so the URL remains the same without any changes. That was our session today. Hopefully now you'll know better how to convert your code and your customization package. And if you need any help or any question you might have, you can go to the GoVE email group. That's it. Thank you very much.